All right, I get it. The New York Jets have had a ton of injuries over the course of the last few years. There are some really talented players in this draft, guys that have some injury concerns. Should the New York Jets consider drafting Derek Stingley Jr. or Jameson Williams? Jets! Welcome to Jets Talk. My name's Ryan. I'll be your pilot. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you've been here before, welcome back. I love having you here. Boys and girls, I go live every Monday at 8 o'clock for my live call-in show, and then Tuesday we come back with our Talking Jets panel, myself, O'Leary, and Greenbean. So ask us all your Jet-related questions. And don't forget, on draft day, we will be streaming all 3 days of the NFL draft right here on this channel, so catch all our live reactions and all the thoughts on all our picks throughout the 3 days of the draft. But let's move on to our video of today. And I want to talk a little bit about injured players in the New York Jets. Over the course of the last few years, the Jets have had what has felt like a ton of players on IR. At one point last year, or the last 2 years, we have had like 40% of our salary cap on IR. It's like mind-boggling how many players have actually been injured. You lose Carl Lawson for the season. You lose Mekhi Becton for the season. LaMarcus Joyner, Vinny Curry. You know, the list goes on. And then you get the receivers dropping, you know, out of the lineup. It's really frustrating. You don't get to see your full complement of weapons or of talent that you could potentially have on your team when you wind up having all these injuries. Now think about the salary cap that you have in dead space that's just sitting there that you can't use towards players. That's basically what the IR is. You spend all this money on talent acquisition and you can't use them. So it's so frustrating, right? Like, in my mind, when I'm looking at this draft and I see injury concern on probably the top, I'd say 2 rounds, first round, second round, I'm like, oh man, red alert, hit the button. Let's not draft this guy. Pull him off the board. Derek Stingley Jr. fell into that category for me for a very, very long time. I did have us drafting him back around the early parts of the football season prior to his injury, but as we've gotten a little bit further along into the process, we know where our draft picks stand. Derek Stingley misses the combine. Do we want to draft him? Well, we just saw his pro day today. He winds up running a 4.37 40, which has a lot of people talking. Like, this is a guy that's coming off a Liz Frank injury from, I believe it was week 3, or maybe injured in week 4, whatever it was, early in the season. Had a phenomenal freshman year and really hasn't had the matched production. Some of that is them throwing opposite directions on him, but some of that is injury concern. And the Liz Frank is kind of a scary one for me because that, to me, tells me the lateral movement might be a concern. At least, like, anytime you have a foot injury with a wide receiver or a cornerback that relies heavily on their feet, just kind of gives me the not so warm and fuzzies. But a 4.37, that guy, he's running fast. And he's even saying he can run faster than that. Now, should the Jets consider taking him? I don't know. When I think of Derek Stingley Jr., right off the bat, I'm thinking D. Milliner. We're getting someone who is injury prone. We drafted a guy who didn't miss a ton of games, but he had a ton of surgeries in the offseason, and I don't want to relive the D. Milliner days of the New York Jets. I'd like to believe the talent recognition from Joe Douglas in this regime is going to be significantly better. But I'm hoping that health concerns could be put aside, because there's a situation where, look, if Stingley's there at number 10 and the Jets decide to make that pick, I don't love it because of the injury, but the talent is undeniable. If he was fully healthy, he's probably considered a top 5 pick in this draft. So there's this weird balance you have to try and juggle between elite talent and healthy talent right now. Because is this Liz Frank injury going to prevent him from playing like an elite caliber corner in the future? I don't know. I was doing a little bit of research. They were going over like 28 different Liz Frank injuries, and 7% of those players never returned to play in the NFL. But I think it was 91% had no major issue. There was no drop off in production in terms of coming back from a Liz Frank injury, which actually kind of surprised me. I didn't realize it was quite such a high recovery rate. So Stingley, the only corner I really like in this draft is Sauce Gardner. I get the talent with Stingley and where he could possibly go. He's faced some of the best competition in all of college football. I don't know. He scares me. The injury bug just kind of scares me. I know it, but I would say Stingley's one I probably wouldn't touch. But going on to another player that has an injury towards the very end of the college football season, that's Jameson Williams. I've talked about him a lot. It's someone I thought was the number one receiver in this draft, and quite honestly, probably is still the number one wide receiver in this draft, even with the ACL injury. And for me, I feel a little bit more comfortable going with the ACL injury because of how you've seen players really bounce back from the ACL tears in recent years. And not to mention, we're seeing videotapes of Jameson Williams already doing some workouts and stuff like that. Like, this guy's apparently going to be ready for, like, June or July, which is bonkers. This is, like, Adrian Peterson level, like, come back from a tear and really perform at that kind of caliber. So, Jameson Williams is an interesting one. I think when you look at Michael Gallup, you look at Chris Godwin, and you look at how teams have paid them $60 million in guaranteed money or in big contracts, that tells me that NFL teams are not as afraid of the ACL tear. And apparently with Jameson Williams' injury, they wound up putting a brace inside of the knee around the ACL, which is apparently better for not re-injuring it, which is huge. That's absolutely massive when you're trying to consider, do you take someone with a top 10 pick with that type of injury concern? So, would you draft Jameson Williams? If they make the pick at number 10 and they say Jameson Williams' name, I'm going to be really friggin' excited. I will. I'm not afraid of the ACL. I'm not looking for a receiver in the top 10. I really am not. I would prefer to trade back into the first or get one in the second round. I think there's a ton of value in a receiver class. It's probably like 8 receivers deep. There's a lot of really good receivers in this class. But Jameson Williams might be the best. And getting a 5th year on him, too, to kind of let him have a little bit more time to come back into his own. Not to mention, we're going to be running a lot of 12 personnel. So you got the 2 tight ends, you got Michael Carter, you got Corey Davis, you got Elijah Moore. So you got Braxton Berrios, you got all these guys that are going to be getting touches or fighting for touches anyway. So if you want to let Jameson Williams kind of work his way through this injury, don't bring him along too quick. I don't mind this. Not to mention, you're getting him on a 5-year contract. So you almost get that extra buffer year for the wide receiver to kind of, gel with Zach a little bit more. Man, this is fascinating. The whole injury concept really bugs me because of how awful the Jets have been in this department. And it's like we've always been considered one of the top medical facilities of all professional sports, not just football. And for some reason, we can't figure out how to get players to stay on the field. Part of me feels like some of it is definitely like guys that might be sort of injured that are kind of pulling a what is it called? A career move or a career decision, business decision, where guys may, if the Jets were playing well, might consider coming back a little more aggressively or might put their health on the line a little bit more. Not that you want to see that. You want to see guys playing fully healthy. But generally speaking, most guys are banged up throughout the football season. So is it uncommon that the Jets are just getting all these injuries? Is it just bad luck? Is it poor scouting? I'm not exactly sure where the injuries come from or why it's happening because it's not really all on our MetLife field that caused a ton of injuries 2 years ago. I don't know. I'm not sure. So let's circle back to the question. Would you draft Stingley or Williams? I would say I'd probably pass on Derek Stingley Jr., even with the speed that he just put on at his pro day. Jameson Williams, while I don't want a wide receiver that high in the draft, he's one I would take. I really like Jameson Williams. So if the Jets come away with an edge rusher at 4, Jameson Williams at 10, I think we are set up to really go best player available the rest of the way out. Guys, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Do you like either of these injury-prone wide receivers, or I don't know if you would call them prone. Do you like either of these injured players? Are there other injured players that you think the Jets should be considering? Maybe someone like a George Pickens? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets.